Hey everybody, it's Omar again, founder here of BusySeed. Today we're going to be talking about fixing the 5 leaks killing your lead flow. Just to remind you guys, we at BusySeed, we've been doing this for some time. We analyze a lot of data across our 550 clients over this time. We've been doing this since about 2013, and we've done this across 25 different industries. So, we see a lot of different areas where really lead flow just gets really bottle capped. So today's conversation is really about setting that straight and making sure that you guys are preventing any of this leakage to go through. So a quick reality check before we dive in. The average B2B website converts about 2.9% of leads. And this is the median across 14 industries that we found from Ruler Analytics, but ultimately across the 25 and the 550 clients that we've helped, we've seen very similar numbers. Now, this is the big thing that nobody really talks about, is that when it comes down to these leads, and when you do generate these leads, 79% of these leads are never going to convert into a sale. This is data not only from us, but also Marketing Sherpa. It shows that really over time analyzing HubSpot data, that these leads for the most part are just going to waste. The math is brutal here. Let's think about it. We have 100 visitors. Those 100 visitors are going to get you about 3 leads. And of those 3 leads, you're going to get less than one of them that's going to close. And so that's why when we think about how do we plug this? How do we fix this leak? We think, of all the metrics, but doubling down on traffic, for example, is not going to be one of them that we see, because ultimately you have a bottleneck and we need to fix that bottleneck. The good news here is that you don't have a traffic problem, you have a leak problem. And whenever you have a leak problem, there are good plumbers like us to help and plug that leak for you. For anybody in the lead generation world, whether you're B2C or B2B, here's the important thing to understand. The first leak that we notice here at BusySeed is response time. This is the single biggest one that a lot of people don't get right. And what does this mean? This means that, if you get a call in, how fast is it? Or if you get a lead that comes in, how fast are you going to be to actually calling? How fast are you going to be to following up? Speed to lead is a critical part of any lead generation strategy, and it really needs to connect with the marketing team as well as the sales team. Marketing can generate 1,000 different leads, but if your sales team isn't calling those up and they're not connecting, then those leads are going to die. MIT actually did a study on this, which analyzed over 15,000 leads and found this ultimately, that if you respond to a lead within 5 minutes, you're 100 times more likely to make contact with them than if you wait 30 minutes. Think about that. That's infrastructure. You have to build out. You have to plan for that, because responding to a lead within 5 minutes, as soon as that comes in, it takes some work. Now, obviously, there are tools out there like Lead Chaser, one of our proprietary tech tools, and there are other tools out there getting to leads. But this is going to be an important one to keep in mind. Another point to keep in mind here is that you're 21 times more likely to qualify that lead compared to a 30-minute wait. Now, what does that mean? It means that really, if you are taking the velocity, you are more likely to close, and it's going to be much easier to qualify. The entirety of the sales process becomes so much easier if you get to that lead within 5 minutes. That's a very important part. Another company, Velocify, they went a little bit further. They analyzed 3.5 million leads. Calling within 1 minute produced about 391% more conversions than calling in a 2-minute mark. Think about that. Now, we just took the difficult task of saying, hey, let's go, from 30 minutes down to 5 minutes, but then even going down to 1 minute. So what this means is that you have a much, much higher rate, 391%, to qualifying to get that lead moving through the pipeline if you just get to them in 1 minute. Again, not as easy to, on paper, but ideally that's what the mentality that we want to talk about today and what we want to make sure that you guys understand. Speed to lead is critical. But let's actually look at average business wise. So the average business takes about 47 hours to respond to a new lead. And this actually comes from a Harvard Business Review of about 2,200 companies. So maybe you're good at getting back to leads. On average, most businesses aren't, when it comes down to dealing with their leads. 47 hours, they're dead, they're gone, they're talking to somebody else. It's, you've waited way too long. Even when we are talking to our clients, our advice and the technology we implement, like Lead Chaser, we're trying to get people responses within the minute. We're trying to get them to move within the minute, because we know that 391% increase in conversion is worth it. So we use technologies in order to do that. But let's actually dive into this a little bit further too, when we're talking about lead generation, because we all know that the first person to come in is going to be more likely to sweep that up. But let me actually put some numbers to you there. 78% of customers buy from the first company that responds, not the cheapest company, the company that first responds. So anybody in the B2B space, really any space, even if you have a product that's more, boutique, a little more expensive than your competitors, you win with speed in customer service. That's the ultimate key to take away from here. So really, the question for, everyone in the room, if you submitted a form on your own website right now, how long will it actually take for somebody to call you back in your own business? Think about that. And I want you to take some time really thinking about how you have your sales process there, because this is the most important leak that we see at BusySeed and we like to plug up. How do we fix this leak? Well, the way that we fix this leak is we start off by auditing your current response time. Now, this requires a few prerequisites. If you want to audit it, you need to be able to keep track of who's calling the leads when they're calling the leads. Do you have a CRM? Is the CRM connected to a phone system? If not, that's going to benefit you a lot, because ultimately, if you're just going on here, if your salespeople say, yeah, I call them right away, not good enough. You need to know your metrics. You need to know your numbers. You need to be able to answer this question. What does it look like? What's the experience going to be from somebody who is interested in working with me, submits a lead? What happens after that? You need to be able to understand the whole flow and the timing of the flow. So on your response time, pull the 50 most recent leads from your CRM and measure them up. See how long it takes to get that first call attempt. Is that data not available? That's part of the leak. Got to fix that. Next, set up some automated SMS and email. Just acknowledge them to make sure that they see it. This is a lot easier to do because you don't need somebody calling up. Simply, you can go into whatever tool or such you're using. There's a lot of tools out there too. And you can build some automated triggers where a lead comes in from a certain area. Boom, send them an email. Boom, send them SMS. Going to make life a lot simpler. And two, SMSs have a much higher response rate as well. So if you called, let's say you called back too, and they didn't pick up, well, they don't know. They know a phone number called, but they don't know who they are. So ultimately, having SMS for context is really helpful. A part of Lead Chaser that actually gets done automatically. Call within the first 60 seconds, and then a message sent out right after that. So we're seeing as top as possible. This is why we see, we've seen over a 50% conversion rate for clients looking to, get to calls and get to leads a lot faster. The other aspect is we want to make sure any lead that we come in that you determine is hot. If you're not determining which leads are hot or not using a system or CRM, another issue, got to fix that. Because the hot leads need to get to a salesperson as fast as possible. Let's say you're generating a lot of leads. Great. Focus on the ones that are the hottest leads and create routing rules depending on what software that you use to make sure that your most, your available agents or anybody can take those hot leads while they're still hot. Again, when it comes down to sales, lead generation, time is the killer of all. So make sure that it routes over there to them. And, after hours, if you're getting some leads and such that are coming after hours, ideas of using, a scheduler to get something. You don't want scheduling a week out. You want it the next few days, possibly. But also using AI voice agents to be able to answer, after hours. That keeps the lead entertained and engaged so they're not looking for others. All of these are going to be very important to plugging this leak. The second, we have the infamous follow-up collapse. This is one that I see consistently, whether it is the, follow-ups just not necessarily doing a good job or not hitting the mark, or simply the follow-ups being too weak, either it being too manual, not automated, even when automated, being too mundane. So let's talk about this a little bit. So lead came in, let's say you called, you did everything there, but ultimately, most leads aren't going to respond after the first call. It's the nature of the business. Actually, with Lead Chaser, we have found that really depending on when you call that lead and the type of lead there, it can sometimes take up to 8 calls before you get that lead on the phone. So we think about follow-ups and we think how crucial follow-ups are. So this is really where 92% of sales reps quit. And this comes from close.com, the sales platform. They have their numbers down packed. They're a good company for sure. But 92% of sales reps fail at this, the follow-up. And, when we think about this, it's very much, it makes sense, right? We see a hot lead come through as humans. We look at it. We're like, yeah, cool. Let's go chase after this one. If they don't follow up back, well, hey, we're going to go over to the next thing. Then we have to store it in our noggins to remember, hey, well, we had that lead we got to follow up with. If this good salespeople naturally have this impact, which again, 92% of salespeople aren't, that full level. There aren't, what we consider, a good closer or a good top tier salesperson. But let's break this down in terms of actual sales here. So 2% close on the first contact, 3% on the second contact, 5% on the third, 10% on the fourth, and 80% close between the fifth and the 12th contact. So if you stop an attempt, at attempt 3 or 4, you're walking away from 80% of your potential revenue. Let that sit with you. Follow-ups are critical here. If you stop attempt 3 or 4, 80% potential revenue gone. Now, when we think about it, sometimes we are too close, we're too micro with the problem. We say, oh, well, we got to do, this better or this better in our whole sales pipeline. Just try following up. Just try making a good cadence. Use a software. Again, Lead Chaser calls up to 10 times so that at some point when they're ready to talk, because they might not be ready when you call them. Their world is so complex. They have so many things going on. The world doesn't revolve around you. So it's important to know that, doing the follow-ups so when they actually have time to speak is critical. Here's another kicker that you'll probably you'll look at and think about your own salespeople and think about how if you've done sales or anything, how you feel, how this resonates with you. But 44% of sales reps give up after the first follow-up, and this is actually a stat that comes from Waves Connect 2026 sales statistic report. Pretty smart guys as well, but think about that. If your sales reps, and you can talk to your sales reps, if they give up after one follow-up, how much are you losing in potential revenue? But another stat that a little bit stings too, especially if you're thinking about this for your own operations, is 60% of customers say that no, they'll say no about 4 times before they say yes. So we keep adding this on and thinking about, wow, how complex it is to make a basic sale, which is something that you should be okay with and you should really process. It takes a lot to make a sale. People are just lining up. People have a bunch of things to do in 2026. In this day and age, everybody's fragmented in terms of their mindsets, their AI this, doom scrolling this. So we have to play to that. We have to think about that, in terms of sales optimization and plugging the leaks. Last thing I'll bring up on a positive note, take all these numbers, flip them the opposite way. Only 8 salespeople may get more than 5 attempts. At that point, when you're doing 8 touches, you're doing these multi-touches, you face almost no competition. So everything that I've mentioned here is a very important, note to say, keep on going. Make sure you have that cadence there. Build that into your systems. Make sure your sales team know that this is exactly the way you need to operate. If you don't have enough time with your salespeople, then use something else. Use a tool, Lead Chaser. I want to keep plugging it. Sorry, y'all. But use a tool to help get you in a better position so that you're not overwhelming your salespeople. Your salespeople focus more on closing than doing the dialing. But it's not even just about having this one follow-up in this one channel in terms of, on the phone. So we talked about, all right, calls, channel 1. We talked about SMS, channel 2. Emails, channel 3, which again is a very weak one. The PET methodology, phone, email, text. Those are the 3, the big ones for sales. Phone is right in their face. Text is still there. It gets 2-minute average response time, and email takes 2 hours. But think about other channels as well. Don't stop there. You have so many other ones, like, for example, LinkedIn. Absolutely fantastic, because some people live on there. Not every client B2C leads, not always on there. B2B leads, absolutely. But when you implement this multi-channel cadence, you're 28% more likely to go from just an interested, curious, marketing qualified lead to more of a sales qualified lead that is ready to go, that has more interest, that has intent. It's important too to make sure that you space out yourself strategically. You want to make sure you're waiting 2 to 3 days, between email touches to boost reply rates. And you want to make sure that you're sending, follow-ups at the appropriate time. If you do too many follow-ups, or you do too frequent follow-ups, that can create an annoyance there. And if you only do the next day follow-up, you're actually going to really drop your response rates down heavily. So think about a cadence. Think about building out that cadence there. And also think about everything that you do has to be thought through. Every touch needs a reason to exist. And when I heard this quote, I loved it, but it really does. The just checking in, you've gotten those emails, I've gotten those emails. It's annoying. Give value in those things. Selves, whether it's a relevant case study, whether it's tagging them in some post to do a touch, whether it's sharing an article saying you thought about them, whether it is giving them some more information that they didn't have before. You want to be making sure each touch you do provides value, because that's going to get you them to come sooner rather than later. We'll talk about leak number 3 now, landing page and form friction. And a lot of times we'll talk about this in, the CRO style in terms of conversion rate optimization. But this is a big area when we think about the funnel, is wherever you're running ads, wherever you're generating your lead from, they're going to a landing page because they need to fill out that form. Sometimes they might be filling it out on Meta. Sometimes they might be filling it out on LinkedIn's native or Google's native or what have you. But most of the time, and as a good marketer, they should be going to a form that you control, that you can analyze and do all of that. And we tend to see better responses where they're going to one of the forms, whether it's an existing form, like jot form, type form, or whether, you're building, a custom one for yourself. As long as analytics can be on it, that's going to be important. But the idea behind this really is that before they become a lead, they need to get to the form and be able to fill it out without friction, and the landing page needs to make sense. So let's take a look at some numbers here. The median landing page converts at 6.6 across most pages. I believe the study was done by Unbounce, which is, they're very much, that's their whole job, really. But they analyzed 41,000 pages, and they found that 6.6% of these people, of these landing pages, are actually converting people over. It's a low number, but that's what the realism of the situation is. I know they looked at something like around over 400 million to 400 million visitors in tracking these different pages and such. So if you're under that, then, that's part of the leak there. If you're seeing yourself getting a 2 to 3%, landing page needs a little bit of love. So here's a killer stat that I'll mention to you, though, is that 81% of people who start filling out your form abandon it. 4/5 of people who start filling out your form abandon it. Isn't that wild? You got to think about what you're putting on your form. You got to think about what you're putting on your page. And on top of that, what I'll mention is that 67% of those, after they abandon it, they're never going to come back. Gone. Forever. You have one opportunity here. And as much as you might be sending thousands or hundreds or thousands or hundreds of thousands of people, to your page, optimization here and really thinking through this flow, reducing down this friction and making it easier for them to fill out, is going to net you more overall leads. So we have to be quick. We have to be very, careful about how many questions we're stuffing into a form and how much data we're putting in. So, you might be looking and say, like, well, that seems a bit brutal, right? 81% of people start feeling abandoning it, and 67% of those never come back. Yeah. I mean, there are a few big reasons why people do this. There are 2 big reasons, mostly. The first reason, security concerns. You wouldn't think about it, but people don't want to give away their information. They don't want information to be leaked out. People, especially in 2026, as a lot of life events have been showing us, things are unstable. People don't want to give away their information. They worry about security. But 27% of people look at the length. If something's too excessive, you've been there. I know it. I've been there. Anytime I get something that's too long, I'm all set. I actually was filling out a form the other day. Asked me too many questions. Look, no, I don't care about this service. This service may have been nice for me. But ultimately, I don't think they should be asking this many questions. I don't feel like giving away this many questions, and I abandoned it. So we have to think about form length. And when we think about form length, we have to think about, when it comes down to form length, what are the different types here? So email-only forms convert about 13.4%. If you have 9 field forms, those convert about 3.6%. So when you're asking questions, how many questions are you asking? Are you asking for an email only? Are you asking for the first name, last name, email, phone number, dog's name? What are you asking for? And is it really that important to get the initial conversation, to get the initial lead? Yeah, you can qualify him on the form if you want, but you can qualify him down the road too. Don't spend time just qualifying him right there. Because overall, if you're doing those 9 questions or above, that's a 4x drop from just asking basic questions about that. Another thing to really think about too is reducing the form fields. If you reduce it down from, in what we found here, reducing down from 11 to 4 increases conversions by a whole 160%. That's not an optimization. That's entirely different business. You change up your sales. You change up a lot of things by just having that optimization. Again, going down from 11 questions to 4 increased conversions by 160%. The other thing I'll mention too is that your page speed matters. And people, honestly, we have short attention spans. We get real sick and tired of things that take too long to load. Pages that load in 1 second convert 3x better than pages that load in 5 seconds. So a few seconds of delay can cost you chunks of leads. 1 second delay costs you about 7 if we do this math right over here. So make sure your page, maybe you have a brand that needs to have strong visuals, but you may be able to trade out those strong visuals for text and for objects that load faster. This is something we constantly think about when we're designing our landing pages for our clients. We want it to be fast. We want it to be pretty. We want it to have the right amount of information so that we get the lead to close as fast as possible. One last tip I'll give you too before we go into the actual final, the fixes of this, plugging this leak up, is this is a really interesting tidbit that I think you'll like. Pages written at a 5th to 7th grade reading level convert at 11.1%. College level convert smaller, 5.3%. Simple wins. Wild stat to think about that, the less, the more you write in a simpler format or, a less, professional format, you can actually get a higher percentage, but 11.1% for 5th to 7th grade reading level, down to a whole 5.3% for any type of college level writing. What you want to think about too when you're thinking about this is if you're using AI to do a lot of your writing, that's college level. You need to make sure too, if you're doing any prompting and doing anything like this, you want to make sure you change the way you think about how you do your copy. So all that said and done, let's plug this leak. So the first area in which we're going to do this leak plugging is we're going to audit the site. We want to look at a whole funnel. When the user enters in onto the landing page and then they go through, what are they doing? Are you using heat mapping? You should be. Heat mapping will show you where people are clicking on. There are a few different tools out there. Hotjar is probably the bigger name right now, but you need to understand exactly where they're going. Sure, you can do it with Google Analytics if you have the patience to go through on that, very data heavy format. Absolutely. But heat maps can be a much easier way of doing it. So again, audit everything. Audit the fields. How much time are people spending on this page? How much time are people clicking through? What are they slowing down when they're filling out your field? What are they doing there? Are you asking too many questions? Think about it. For high value B2B, this is where, each lead can be worth tens of thousands. Some of our clients are hundreds of thousands. We need to think about what that looks like. So for B2B, a lot of times we use multi-step forms. The beauty behind a multi-step form is you're not overwhelming them with a bigger form. And we need to validate sometimes. We need to ask certain questions. And sometimes we can't do it in 4 questions. It'd be nice if we could, but sometimes we need to get a little bit more information to actually push back on unwanted leads. So when we do this and we use a multi-step form instead of just having a plain form, we see that they outperform single page forms by nearly 86%. The idea is that users don't get overwhelmed by seeing all of them in one shot, question by question by question. They go, obviously, this goes to a certain limit. Try to get away from the 11 questions, but going question by question is actually really, really helpful. The last 2 things I'll mention is speed of the landing page, keep it under 3 seconds. That's the plug you need to make. Images, videos, whatever, optimize them or remove them. They're not as important as getting the lead. If the image is just there to look pretty and it's making your page load longer, pointless. Optimize it or get rid of it. You want to make sure you're capturing lead. That's the funnel. That's the job of the funnel. And really, make sure you have 1 offer per page. Landing pages are meant to be A/B tested. And in a good marketing agency or anybody doing this well, doesn't just run with 1 landing page, they run with multiple ones. Our seed landing system, for example, in 1 page, we can create a infinite amount of A/B tests and A/B variables. So we can test out a lot of different things simply by changing around the URL. But if you're not using our seed landing system, then you want to make sure that you are constantly testing out, because pages with multiple offers tend to see the conversion rates drop down by 266% compared to pages with single offers. Again, this whole topic is don't overwhelm the user. So let's talk about leak number 4. No nurtures for the 50% who aren't ready. Because realistically, 50% of people just aren't ready. They're curious. But one little fun thing that I like pointing out, I got my little buddy there behind me. He's a little sad that he can't make it into the room. But if you see him right where my thumb is, that's a little caramel over there, my little bunny. So if you caught that out early on, good eye. But he's a little sad right now that he can't join the room. And he's also sad to figure out that really, when it comes down to it, 50% of people aren't ready. I actually think he really cares about that, but let's go with it. So this one's huge because almost everyone misses it. 50% of your leads are qualified, but not ready to buy. And this isn't just us. The Glenster Research Center, they actually push this forward. But this is something that I see that happens with a lot of businesses that I coach and I guide. Ultimately, there is impatience when it comes down to leads, into your lead generation. But it's a disconnect from what the actual user sees and what the user feels. Because to them, when you get that lead, you're like, oh, hey, this is a good lead. Let's go through it. This might be a one. You're taking it way more seriously than they are. They're submitting information because they're curious. 50% of them aren't ready to buy. 50% of them are just trying to learn more. And as veteran salespeople will know, and as they'll go through their sales process in different careers and such, they'll see that, yeah, there are a lot of tire kickers out there. There are a lot of curious people out there. And sure, it's great to connect with them because that might turn into an eventual deal. But ultimately, it's more important to work with their time frame. Yes, they're not ready now, but will they be ready a month down the road, 2 months down the road? Nurturing and the constant communication is important. I want to take some time in talking about this one too, because this one is a pretty decent one here. But again, think about it. 50% of your leads are qualified, but they're just not ready to buy. And again, this comes from the Glenster Research Center, and they know their stuff there. But what that translates to is half of every lead you generate is a real buyer. They're just not ready. They're just not, they're curious. They have some level of intent. They are a real buyer. They're just not on your timeline. They're on their own time. And we need to play with that. So when we think about this, what happens to these leads in a lot of companies is that, okay, they get 1 sales call, they get 2 sales call, and then they get marked as not interested. And I'm sure you've been there. I'm sure, a lot of people, your sales team has been there. Lead comes in, hey, they didn't pick up, or I tried following up. I'm just going to leave this and go for, a better lead. Well, you're playing on your own timeline, and that doesn't generate sales. You need to play to their timeline. So what that looks at is nurturing. And here's an important thing that you should be doing instead of, just letting these disappear forever, is you need to think about it this way. 65% of marketers have no documented lead nurturing process. That in itself is a gap. But if 65% of marketers are doing that, and they're just simply no nurture process, and you're building in a full nurture, you're more likely to get them at the time in which they need help. Think about it. You kill off a lot of your competition by being persistent with nurtures, by existing, by being there, by reminding them, again, no useless checking in, giving them value, giving them some form of value. If you can do those touches in a way in which you are providing them value, you're going to stay at the top of their mind, and they're more likely going to be to go with you after your competition gives up after 1 or 2 calls. That's something important to think about. Companies that do structure their nurtures properly tend to see a 50% more generation in overall sales ready leads, those SQLs, and they get them at a 33% lower cost. This is Forrester's data. So, what does that mean? Well, that means that if you're doing nurtures, you're going to get people when they are when they're actually saying like, yep, got the budget, got everything down right now. I could actually do this. When they're ready to go, your nurture there, they associate that, you're top of mind. Hey, let's do this. Versus if, they get ready in 3 months and you stopped after 2 calls. Okay. Well, you lost that lead. So that's an important thing to keep in mind. And that's overall going to save you on a lot of costs, because if your budget, you're going to make more revenue, obviously, and you're going to save on costs because you don't need to be as desperate at getting in new leads and throwing those leads away after 2 calls, even though they needed the 8th call in order to have that conversation. Think about that. One other thing that I'll mention too here is that nurture leads also make 47% larger purposes than non-nurture leads. When you think about it, they've been learning about you. Maybe the touches that you've been doing have been giving them some value. So by the time it actually gets back to them, then, okay, yep, we're ready for these services that we're originally interested in, but also, can you help with this? Can you help with that? And I'll tell you, I actually had a client do the same thing, maybe about a few months ago. They came in, had a call, nothing happened after that, nurtured. And then that turned into a 10-figure deal, monthly recurring 10-figure deal, because we came in at the right time and they needed help with a bunch of other things. That type of mentality, that is really going to help. So think about that when you're thinking about your nurtures and how important nurtures are to your business. But we should actually too keep into account prospect buying times. So there's an interesting number here that I'll give to you. 63% of prospects who request info now, they won't buy for at least 3 months. And this obviously changes based on, the offering that you have, how expensive it is and all of that. But think about that. That is 3 months. Your nurture should be 3 months long. It's something important for you to keep in mind. So now let's talk about plugging this lead. Build a nurture sequence. Do it for those leads who just, maybe not be interested now. They didn't respond to you. They didn't do whatever. That's fine. Make it 90 days minimum, 3 months, and make it about 6 to 12 emails. You can touch on this also with SMS and other areas to quote unquote touch them, to reach out to them. Which, we call it touching in sales and in marketing. It's fun. But at the end of the day, really the biggest fix of the solution, build out 6 to 12 emails over 90 days, always give value. Segment them by stage. Awareness lead, the leads that you have that are in the awareness stage, they need education. There are some in consideration. Those guys need proof. They need case studies to, validate you're good. And the decision stage, they really just need urgency and a next step to make it easier. So you can have multiple sets of these. And depending on what you're doing, if you're doing cold email and such, most of the time, and then after a cold email, they're going into a nurture sequence. Most of the time, that they're going to be, if they haven't talked to you yet, they're in the, awareness stage. Some of them might reply back, some in their consideration stage. But even too, for leads that you have a conversation with, maybe you scheduled, a call from an email outreach. They're not interested right now, but ask them the questions on that call to understand exactly where they're at. Are they in the curious stage, the consideration stage, or the ready to throw money at you stage? Ready to throw money, call them up, close them, give them the next steps. If they're in the consideration stage, tell them why you're the right one. Show them the case study, show them everything there. And if they're in the education stage, just keep talking to them. Just send different pieces there and, make sure that you're staying top of mind. Another thing to really think about is the lists that you generate and the lists that you're doing. You don't want to burn those lists. And when I say burn those lists, I'll give you the example here is that, salespeople who check in every, 21 to 30 days instead of doing it weekly, they'll actually see a higher conversion rate, a 47% conversion rate. So think about the prospects that you have. If you haven't really talked to them, you don't need to be sending them an email every other day. You can send an email every few weeks or so. That's something important. Leak number 5, misalignment between marketing and sales. Y'all, I will tell you that this final leak is actually one that I see across every business I work. There are some gems out there that already have this figured out, but it's a big issue I see across multiple businesses, especially enterprises, the bigger that you get. When sales and marketing don't talk, kills so much momentum for both. Sales is going to get angry because they feel something in marketing is going wrong. Marketing is going to get angry because they feel the sales isn't following up. They aren't doing the nurtures and all that there. So this is one big one I advise a lot of clients on. And I say, really take a look at your departments. None of this is an isolated silo. Sales and marketing have to talk. They have to communicate. But here's some numbers for you. Sales teams ignore 48% of leads the marketing team send over. Isn't that crazy? 48%. Think about your own sales team. Think about your own self if you're doing sales there. But yeah, that's for multiple 2026 reports from Marketing LB and Forrester. So this is data by 2 companies that have come together to put this together. So what that means, half of your leads never get worked on. That, and honestly, I've seen certain industries, especially enterprises. I actually remember looking at a Fortune 1000, looking at their lead numbers, and this was actually before they were going through an acquisition. We looked through their numbers, and it was north of 70 to 80% of their leads that they got over time over the past year weren't responded to. How that hurt me as, just as a business owner, as somebody, that is responsible, for finances, for all of that, budgets. That hurt me when I read that, because ultimately that is throwing away so much money in generating those leads and those efforts from the marketing people for all of that, which those could have turned into something. That's an important thing to have. And that's why it's, at BusySeed, when we're working with anybody, the funnel, how sales operates, and we try to understand exactly how sales operates. All of that impacts it here. Impacts really what you can end up doing there. So as you can see, this is a big one. Misalignment between marketing and sales can really cause a lot of pain. But let's actually get into now what the fix is. First thing, shove marketing and sales together in the same room, lock the door, throw coffee at them and donuts, let them get to work. At the end of it, you open the door, they're all singing Kumbaya by a campfire. That's the goal here. We want to make sure they're talking to each other. 2, we want to make sure we are speaking a similar language. Because again, when we think about this, 48% of leads that marketing sends over, nothing happens with those. If we communicate what a lead is, what a lead means, how salespeople can interpret it, if we're talking on the marketer's end, then we can convert more of those. So it's going to be important to define what that quality lead is, doing that together, writing it down, creating an SLA, not just a vibe. And that's going to be the idea. So really make sure your teams talk about this. Understand that MQLs are still valuable. Don't throw those away. They need to be nurtured. They need to be touched in the right way. SQLs, obviously, those are the easy ones there. But make sure you're having those conversations. Implement lead scoring. This is a lot of Pipedrive, you think Salesforce, all these other ones. All of these CRMs natively have some lead scoring, so implement that. Because companies that, see that do lead scoring see closing rates, especially if you're getting a good lead flow, go from 30% to 70%. Easy, stupid easy. Just do it. Especially since it's a feature that comes pretty standard on a lot of different softwares. Final one I'll tell you here is close the loop. Sales tells marketing what closed and what didn't. That's important. That's the basis. You should have that as a default, because marketing needs that feedback. And when you throw a wall between those and you don't have that communication, marketing doesn't know what's going on. And it's only going to shoot yourself in the foot, because sales is going to get upset, marketing's going to get upset, everybody's going to get, then upper management, owners, CEOs, C-suite is going to say, this isn't working, then all this happens. But it's not because of the individual departments. As an owner or, as a leader of these departments, you got to merge them together, make them talk, and make sure that everything going over, every lead go over gets feedback, gets written comments in the CRM, has a conversation on the weekly 15-minute meeting, whatever that is. That's very, very important to do. And that is going to help you plug the 5th leak, which is the misalignment between marketing and sales. So in closing, let's recap all this. The 5 leaks: speed to lead, follow-up, landing page, nurture, sales and marketing misalignment. If you can get to them in 5 minutes, that's the bar, the expectation to set. You're going to win so much more of them. If you're able to keep going on to the 5th to 12th touch, you're going to beat out most other reps, your competitors, who stop after 1. If your landing page has much less friction and you're able to keep small forms and to keep the questions concise, then you are going to be able to really grow how much you convert overall on the page, increase your overall conversion rates. If you are not nurturing half of those leads, half of those buyers, they're not ready yet. So if you are just giving up there, then these 50% that, are there, they're just going to go away. And then the final one, sales and marketing alignment. Half your leads are getting ignored. Get on the same page, get the same communication going. All of that's going to be important. The beauty behind what I'm telling you too is that these are fixes. These are areas you can help plug the leaks. And doing this is not going to require you to spend more money on ads. They just require, you putting in the time and effort to fix this. Even if you close one of these leaks, you'll see compounding revenue inside the 90 days. So here's what I'll tell you to do this week. Go test out your website, test out your form, try to give it a thing, and try to get family to test it out, to use it. See how they use it. See how they get a good understanding. Understand your timing. Understand how fast it is to get to a certain, to get to a call. Understand all of that there. Pick a landing page, optimize it, cut it in half. And honestly, doing any of those is going to move the needle a little bit. But again, most of the time, marketers, salespeople, everybody's a little bit busy. So that's why we exist at BusySeed. We're here to help make this all easier for you. We've done this whether it comes to startups, all the way up to Fortune 500s, mom and pop shops. We do this so that we can help plug the holes, help fix the leaks so you see more revenue. This is a lot of work. This definitely takes a lot of work, but this is what our team's been doing for 12 years, helping our clients. So feel free to reach out and make sure you let them know that I sent you. You'll probably be talking to me if you end up reaching out, just because I'm very close with every one of my clients. But yeah, reach out. Any questions that you have, more than happy to answer. I want to make sure that I give you as much information as possible. That's going to be it for today, everybody. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. Have a good day.